All right, welcome to Building the Athlete. I'm your host, Scott Benson. On today's show, we've got Robert Cagle of the National Scouting Report, NSR. Robert, thanks for being here today. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you got going on.
Coach, it's always good to talk to you, and I appreciate everything you do, and not just on this podcast and Out Over the Waves, but also individually what you do to help athletes in the gym. And man, I appreciate you more than you realize. What is there to know? I'm an old athlete, Scott. Like I think, like all of us, I just happen to have more gray hair than you do. And but I played at Ole Miss in the '80s, and on the football side, it's hard to see in this chair, but I'm a big fella, and so played offensive line at Ole Miss from '86 to '89. I had a great career there. After I finished there, I was on that recruiting staff with Coach Brewer. My wife was on that recruiting staff as well, one of the first females to serve on a recruiting staff. Several years ago, a bunch of years of coached high school football here in the state of Alabama. Have two children. My daughter got me into volleyball and basketball and track and field, and my son's my size, and he was a football guy. He had played high school football for me here. So as you can imagine, we might take football kind of serious in the state of Alabama as much as we take volleyball serious in other parts of the country. But it's good. Both kids had great high school careers and went on to play Division I athletics. Jordan played at Jacksonville State on the football side, and he was part of that national championship run that they made to play North Dakota State. In 2016, they did not win, so he's got a runner-up trophy for that deal. And then my daughter was also a track and field kid there as well. So NSR, National Scouting Report, as a company, I serve as the vice president of the company. We help athletes get from high school to college in a very murky, convoluted process now. The recruiting world is not clear. There's a lot of misinformation, Scott, that's given out there to parents and kids, and by people with good intentions. They just don't live in the recruiting space every day to understand what that really is. And so that's what we do. And we still do things the old fashioned way, Scott. We have to evaluate players first to make sure they're good enough to play. Not everybody's going to get a trophy. Just because your daughter plays club volleyball or your son is a good high school player, made all state or whatever the deal is, they still have to be good enough to play somewhere collegiately. And so we do evaluations and then decide how we want to move forward with that. Anyway, that's who I am, and we've been doing this a long time. But man, I'm looking forward to our conversation today, just to chit chat and talk.
Okay. And tell me, your wife is involved in the company as well, correct?
Yes, she is. She is. Susan was on the recruiting staff at Ole Miss, one of the first women to serve on a football recruiting staff in the Southeastern Conference back in 1986. There was a group of them that came in at Ole Miss about the same time. And so she serves as our national director of scout operations. So she helps and literally assist all of the different scouts that we have throughout the country in the different sports at NSR. And so she does that every day. People ask, well, how's it with, somebody will say, well, how is it like working with your husband? And she'll say, well, working with him is pretty good, but you'll have to ask him how he feels about working with me. And it's pretty good, Scott. I mean, we figured out that balance over these last 17 or 18 years of doing this together. And so, yes, she is. I tell people she's forgotten more about recruiting than most people will ever know just because of her background. So,
Yeah. Well, that's awesome that you guys can work together. So, a big weekend in the news, coaches moving around, all kinds of things going on. A lot of hate out on social media because people are losing their coach. My alma mater, Campbell's going to Penn State, which, I completely understand. You're leveling up. Ole Miss been in the news a lot lately. So there's obviously some very emotionally charged issues out there right now. Just give me a quick, how do you feel about the whole Ole Miss situation?
So number one, from an Ole Miss perspective, and this is what you may have seen this. I posted on social media when Ole Miss was playing the other day against Mississippi State. I'm not a fan. I lived it, breathed it, bled on the field, broke bones. So when you're actually somebody that lived that process, for you, it means more than just whether you win or lose. It means more whether it's not, you're just not a fan. You're more than that. And but the fans they drive the money, and they drive the ticket prices, and they drive the media. And I get all that. And so for me, we look at this whole situation at Ole Miss, and I don't think we can isolate Ole Miss. I think we have to look at the situation as truly a debacle that's been created by the NCAA, and the NCAA is at some point in time is going to have to fix the debacle. Now, I don't think the debacle is that's just that cat's out of the bag. It's never going to be back in the bag. It's going to be what it is, and so that we can't. They need to learn how to govern that better. and understand what that is inside each institution. But I think what we have to do is we have to look at collectively what causes this situation of all these coaches flipping. In the NFL, Scott, you probably aware of this. I mean, NFL, if one coach is going to move to another program, number one, it's going to be the person that's soliciting that coach has got to contact the front office of that NFL organization and seek permission first. And usually it's not given until after the season's over with to talk to that coach. We also know in the NFL and all major league and all professional sports, this. Well, the player themselves are not dealing with trade negotiations in the middle of seasons. They're not. They're not dealing with it till the season's actually over with, or if there is trade negotiation going on during the season, and we know that trades take place prior to certain dates in professional sports, well, that's being handled by the front office people and managers and agents and that kind of stuff. The players still got a contract to play under. I think where we are today in sports and college is, why are we having the transfer portal open up before we finish the season and have the national championship game in football or any sport for that matter? Why are we doing that? It should not happen. Why are we allowing coaches to be approached by agents and other people before their season's over with and they've lived out the execution of that year's contract? So I think there's some things that have to take place at the NCAA level. And I think those coaches have got to come together. And if we were to talk to 10 coaches, even Lane Kiffin and others, we would come down to the same. They would all say, we need to get together and we got to come up with a better way to do this. And I think that's the case. I mean, Penn State, let's use them as an example. I mean, Penn State, it took forever for them they got so far behind in the process because they were trying to find the right guy. And all of a sudden the right people, weren't maybe there to begin with for them. And so, because it was a lot of pulling. But all that being said, what's the temperature at Ole Miss? I think Ole Miss is excited about Pete Golding. I think for those of us that are kind of close to the program, we appreciate those guys going and staying inside the program to keep continuity as we go through the first ever playoff run. And I think that continuity and that consistency of what Pete brings is the right thing at this moment. I don't think it's anything like a Matt Luke situation back a few years back. Matt and his brother Tom, I mean, they all came in, and Tom and I played together, his brother, and Matt was after me at Ole Miss. I don't think it's that situation at all, even though I'm a Matt Luke fan. This is a situation where I think Pete has proven he's ready for the job, and that continuity for this particular season to execute and do well in the playoffs, I think it's going to be. But I'm going to tell you, if they overlook Tulane, John Summerall and Tulane will beat them. They better be ready when they get ready to play Tulane. Tulane's going to punch them in the mouth. It's going to be a fight.
Yeah, and that's what we hope for in those bowl games.
No doubt.
And I tell you what, Penn State was they were definitely behind on that deal, but they came out smelling like roses because Campbell is a great coach and an awesome human being. So they got
a winner out of that deal.
Yeah, I don't know how.
The thing is with that, Scott, is that they've gotten so far behind because of the recruiting process, the way they're going to have to make up some ground. And he's a guy that can do that. He's a great person, but he's also a great recruiter.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk a little volleyball. That's kind of the sport that brought you and I together. And I know you spend a lot of time with a lot of volleyball players. I think it was 2 or 3 episodes ago, I had an athletic director on talking about, all the NCAA regulations and everything that's changed in the last year or two. And I feel it's an important enough topic to address it again now, because I deal with this every day and I see these kids and, I've already seen it in our athletes, kids that were going Division I and Division II 5 years ago are now JUCO and NAIA kids. So tell me, let's just talk specific to volleyball for right now. With the roster limitations and all of that, how has that affected the recruiting process in high school to college?
Okay, that you asked a question, but man, that question has got so many tangents that we could take off of that one question. So let's we'll start kind of knocking those things out one at a time. Let's talk about roster limitations first. From a standpoint, when the NCAA started restructuring all these rosters, and then 105 football, then we went to 18 for volleyball instead of 12 full. So then everybody began to think, well, that's going to be at the Division I level, that's going to be 18 full rides. If you're on scholarship on volleyball, if you're on the team, that's 18. Well, that's the first misnomer, right? I mean, that's the first fallacy in the thinking. Second, what everybody, and then people go, well, there's going to be more opportunities. Well, what people don't realize is that you take your Power 4 schools, most of those coaches already were rostering between 19 and 22 players already. They were already rostering those kids. Okay, now they couldn't be on their official 12 or 13, 12 count, but they were rostering those kids, and those kids were walk-on type players, and they were kids that maybe were on academic money there, but they were practicing with the team. And so the point is when they put this limitation in play, the truth is it didn't raise the number of opportunities at Division I level. In fact, it may have lessened it by a few. And so that's the piece of it that people don't realize. From the money perspective, it was up to each conference, and then it was up to each school if they were going to fully fund all 18 of the new scholarships and say, okay, if you're on scholarship, it's a full ride. 18 equals 18 kids and 18 full rides. And not every conference and not every university was able to afford to do that. They just didn't. We saw that also in other sports, right? We saw that in football, especially. I mean, the SEC didn't even go to the 105. They stayed at 85. They're going to make that change next year for the football side. But on the volleyball side, parents and kids get a little bit of information that the media begins to give them. But what they don't realize is that this information they're getting is not always 100% accurate to the situation. That's the part of it I think that's frustrating for me from a standpoint of living in it daily is the misinformation that people get from these types of whether it be, everybody that writes something on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, they're all experts, but they're not living in it every day. And that's the kind of piece that kind of drives me crazy. The limitation piece has definitely affected it. Now, what we're going to see, Scott, and this is a second tangent, and it's probably something that you may have wanted to address, but I'm going to address it. Look, the first place that every Power 4 Division I coach is going to do now, if they have an immediate roster spot that they need to fill, they have a graduating senior that just finished or left, they have a kid that gets injured, and they've got to fill a spot next year, but maybe it's an ACL, they're going to have to, they're going to medically redshirt a kid. They're not going to a high school kid that's 18 years old. They're going first to the portal, and they're going to recruit a kid from another college that's already got 2 years of playing experience, a year of playing experience, 3 years of play. That lady now, she's not a girl at 18. She's a 21-year-old woman, and she's playing the game. And there's no adjustment period now for that. And you know what I mean by this, by all college athletes. So parents and kids that are listening, there is a major physical, emotional, and mental change from stepping from high school to playing at any level collegiately. And there is an adjustment period that goes on there. Everybody wants to think it's not, well, it doesn't apply to me. No, it does. You got to get accustomed to what's about to happen because life's not the same when you get to college that it is in high school. The level of play, the intensity, the desire from all your teammates, the classroom situation, the time management stuff, all that matters. But I say that to go back to this. Every coach that we talk to that's at the Power 4 level and even your mid-majors, the group of 5 schools, that stuff. Scott, they're going to go to the portal first and try to find a young lady that's now a woman that's 20, 21, 22, 23 years old with a year or two of eligibility left, and that's where they're going to go first. If they can't find that kid, then they're going to go to the junior college route, and they're going to find that athlete that was a good student, that's a great player, that maybe she didn't want to go way off to college somewhere. Maybe she had an academic issue to begin with, but she's gone to JUCO now and she sorted that out. Whatever the situation is, but that kid now is that all-conference, all-American JUCO, and she's proven herself, so they take that kid. That leaves the high school athlete, Scott, at the bottom of the totem pole. Whereas 10 years ago, the high school athlete was what? It was at the top of the totem pole. It's had a complete reverse. And so I think parents have got to realize if you've got you got a young lady and we'll pick volleyball. She's 6 foot tall. She's touching 9'10" to 9'11", just under 10 feet. 10 years ago, no doubt she was going to if she was great, if she had polished skills, great feet, quickness, agility, was a great, good looking athlete, a good student, she probably gets a chance to get some Division I looks and maybe play Division I volleyball. Scott, today, if you're 5'11", 6 foot tall, and you can't touch 10'6", 10'5", if you're not 6'1" or 6'2", you probably going to play D2. Maybe NAI or D3 or maybe JUCO. But that vacuum is what's taking place right now because of the transfer portal and because of the way the NCAA's changed their roster spot stuff.
Do you have an updated number of how many volleyball players are in the portal?
So I do not have the latest number, but the number we had the last time I checked, and this came from we were having a conversation with the Division II coach. In fact, one of our scouts was in the coach's office at a Division II school. And this is back in, I'm going to say mid to late summer, and I could be wrong. But at that point in time, there was 2,100 athletes, female athletes in the NCAA volleyball women's transfer portal. 2,100. Let's put that into perspective a little bit. Scott, there's on average, less than about 7,000 roster spots to be had in college at any given time every year. So you're talking about almost 30% of those roster spots, almost being literally kids being in a portal. And what people don't realize in that portal, it's nothing. It literally is a name, a university name they're coming from, and how many years of eligibility they have left, and an email address. There's nothing else in there. That's all there is. And so it's not like the NCAA is promoting this kids to these colleges. It's not. A college coach has got to be going in there and looking for somebody in that too, which there's some validity to that, but still, we got kids that don't ever get out of the portal. About 60% of the athletes that get in the transfer portal never get out of the portal. That means they burned the bridge at the university they left or leaving and can't go back, and they're not getting somewhere else to go to. So it's not the answer and not the be all. And that's what some people realize after they get into it. It's what people don't realize until they get into it.
So how many of those kids then look for downward movement? How many D1s then look at, D2s or even lower?
I think that's a good question. And, on the early statistics were telling us that probably almost half to, I won't say quite 3/4, but we'll say half to 60% of the athletes that got in the portal were actually having to transfer down in level. Give you an example. Kid goes and signs Division I. They get there. It was a push all along. The kid was on the bubble. They get there. They don't get to play in time. The coach even tells them, look, you haven't developed the way you need to. We can't cut you loose but we can tell you that if you won't play in time, you probably need to get in the portal and find somewhere else to go. Well, those conversations are real. Okay. And that's the way that happens. And so that kid gets in the portal, and then, they're in their mind, everybody gets in the portal thinks they're going to do a lateral or an up movement, right? Let me back that up. Most people get in the portal because they think they're better than what they are. We'll stay with that. We'll say that and stay there for now. But I would say that statistically, half to 60% of those kids are going to end up, if they land, they're going to land somewhere at either an equivalent or a lower level than what they are. They're going to go down in level because that's where they should have played to begin with out of high school. That's where their skill set really fit.
And that's got to be, it's got to be changing the landscape of recruiting for Division II as well.
Division II is I tell people all the time, Division II is, those guys are also going to the portal first. You're very competitive programs. You take the Tampas and the Ferris States and the Metropolitan States in Denver and those guys that are in the Elite Eight and the National Championship for Division II right now, there's 8 really good programs in there. And I'm going to tell you that some of those guys, they're going to fill their roster spot next year with transfer portal kids instead of going to high school, get a high school kid. And so it's got a trickle down effect all the way down. Those guys are trying to figure out how to put the biggest, tallest, strongest, best athletes on the floor they can, because their contracts for the coach are tied to winning as well. And so it has a trickle down at D2. I will say this, there's some things going on at D2 that people don't realize. We always talk about dates for recruiting in the recruiting world. Everybody thinks that June 15th is this big date in volleyball recruiting, the June 15th after sophomore year. And it is a big date in the sense that that's the first day that a Division I coach can pick the phone up and actually call and communicate with a kid about an offer and recruiting them to their school. The issue is that all of the identification, recognition, and evaluation of that athlete has been going on for 18 months or 2 years before. A coach's not going to pick a kid up at, I don't know, Rice or Baylor or Wisconsin. They're not going to pick a phone call for the first time and talk to that kid for the very first time on June 15th at 12:01 a.m. They've already evaluated that kid for a year and a half. They already know that's the sound investment. That's the offer I'm going to make. People don't realize that at 12:15 a.m., half the Power 4 schools have already extended their offers out by text message, phone call, and email at 12:15 a.m. on June 15th after a kid's sophomore year. And then they're setting up a time to actually get a phone call or a video conference with the family later that day to work out the details of the offer. That's how it's going on. Now let's back up. D2 is it's kind of like the redheaded stepchild. Okay. They're just treated bad. D2, not treated bad by the NCAA, but by parents and kids. Well, I'm too good for D. No, you're not. If a D2 or NAI or D3 school is not communicating with an athlete when they're sophomore or freshman, because they can offer at any time. That's what people don't realize. D2 now, after August of 2024, they have no limitation as far as when they can talk to a kid, when they can actually offer that athlete. There's no limitation. The only limitation there is face-to-face contact off campus or on campus. That's it. But they can have those same conversations and communicate with them anytime. I think D2 it has got so many more advantages now as a recruit, being able to recruit, because they are able to go ahead and have that conversation with kids and really tell a kid, I like you. You're going to be an offer kid for us. There's another piece of legislation that's been considered. We'll see how it comes down real soon. Is D2 is trying to get to where they actually have 5 years of eligibility, period. Now, we'll see if it passes. But if it does, then all of a sudden, the kids in high school now are going to get tapped on the head again, right? And their recruiting is going to be negatively affected again at that level, because now you've got another year of eligibility for a group of kids that are already sitting in there. So it's going to be an interesting way that plays out. But D2, look, D2 is some unbelievable volleyball. I mean, you get competitive, you get to the top 25 programs in D2. Some of those programs will line up and beat the bottom 30 or 40, bottom 30% of Division One. I mean, they're just good play. They're good programs, a good player.
Yeah. Is this the way it is now, or is this a bad hangover from COVID where you've got kids that got to stick around for longer?
I think what we're seeing, number one, let's go back to COVID. Terrible. Okay. It was terrible. It created so much indecision, indecisiveness. It created havoc as far as what was fair or not fair for the current kids, losing seasons, missing a season, those kind of things. And I understand the necessity from the NCAA to figure out some way to not for those kids not to be affected, or we'll use the word punished. That's not really the right word, but negatively impacted by something they had no control over. Okay. Well, none of us had any control over it, right? I mean, that's just the way that was. I think as a result of some of the doors that we've opened now, we can't close them. And I think NIL is one of those. We're never going to be able to take that back. It is what it is. I think the fact that we've created a situation where we've shown where we're going to give extra years of eligibility for circumstances that are kind of catastrophic, and they did. And now we're seeing those changes kind of come around again, where there was this rumor because of this, Pavia and those guys at Vanderbilt, with the junior college thing, that there was a rumor for a little bit that every kid that played junior college still had 4 years of 4-year experience at the NCAA, because junior college don't count against you. That's incorrect. It does count. Okay. And there's an exception to that you have to get. And that exception was 2 guys in the NCAA on the football side. I'm not aware of any others. I'm sure that somebody will file a suit at some point in time and maybe be granted that. But the point I'm trying to make is that I think we're in this now, this type of mentality. I think it's just what it is as a result. I don't think we're ever going to be able to put that back in Pandora's box. That door's open and we can't shut it now.
Okay, good. Kind of jumping back to what we were talking about, just the different levels in recruiting. You had said these kids that were Division One, Division Two are now looking at JUCO. I think there's a lot of confusion out there with JUCO on the different levels of JUCO, because I think some of those high level JUCOs, it's probably as hard to get in with them as it is, a higher level D2 for sure. And so that's kind of part one of that question, the different levels of JUCO. But then the other thing that I've seen, and I feel like I've seen a lot more of, is I've seen JUCO rosters that there are very few, if any, Americans on them. And that brings in a whole different element of recruiting, which is the foreigners. They've always been around. They've always been part of college athletics. But in volleyball, I feel like those numbers are increasing.
Yeah. Let's address it and go backwards, and we'll address that first, and then you may have to remind me of your question on the front side, JUCO and different levels. But I promise, maybe this gray hair won't let me down. Number one, we for 17 or 18 years of me doing this, 35 years of coaching and being around the coaching world, international players have always been present, whether they're from Canada, whether they're from Eastern or Western Europe or Australia, South America, Mexico, wherever they met. Canada. I mean, I mentioned Canada already, but the point is that we've always had those players, and they find themselves to be, because of the NCAA requirements academically, to get through the eligibility center. Sometimes because of that loss of translation in academics between one country and another, then all of a sudden it makes it difficult for them to become eligible through the NCAA process. The NAIA process is a little less stringent, and so you'll see a lot more international players at 4-year NAIA schools. But the junior college process is all they have to have is an equivalency of what a GED or high school diploma would be from that particular country or that particular region, and they're able to get that kid in school at the junior college. And so we do see a greater number. And let's pick the sports. Volleyball's big in that. Golf is big in that. Tennis is big in that. And any of your other Olympic sports, track and field, you see a lot of that. You'll see my daughter was a track and field athlete at Division I level at Jacksonville State University. She had multiple kids on that roster with her that were international kids, Italians, Spaniards, kids from England. So there was, that was not uncommon at all. And so you have those different sports that are that way. Volleyball on the women's side historically hasn't been as much, but over the last 5 to 7 years, with the transition such COVID and so many people really wanting to get their child from other countries to the States for college, we've seen an uptick in that, especially at the junior college level and AI level for women's volleyball. I think it's here to stay, and I don't think there's any different from that we talked about earlier. Coaches are trying to figure out how to recruit the best players they can, no matter where they're from, to win. And when they can find a great player that's got great size and she's athletic as all get out. She's been training under some Olympic development type program since she was 5 years old. Whether it had been, maybe it started in gymnastics and it moved itself over to other sports. And that's what happens a lot of times in different countries is those, especially women, they start them out at gymnastics or something along those lines at a young age to develop them, especially in their sports, especially when you get into Asia and China and parts of that, Korea. It's a lot of that. And so you'll see they develop. They're talented, they're disciplined athletes, and they're really good athletes. So I do believe we've seen more of that. I don't think that's going to go away. I think we'll continue to see that. First question was?
Well, just the different levels of JUCO.
Different levels of JUCO. This is one of those things. All JUCOs are not created equal. I will tell this story. I will not give out names. I don't want to embarrass anybody. I was talking to a gentleman one day. He said, "Well, we're just going to send my daughter. My daughter's just going to go play at the junior college." I said, "Really? So your junior college coach has recruited her?" "Well, no, we're just going to go play." I said, "That's not how this works. They've got to recruit her and they got to see her as a player they want to add to their roster, and they've got to decide to offer her a roster spot. And they're going to have to take you through all 4 stages of the recruiting process, just like everybody else goes through. This is not your choice." And he go, "Well, I thought anybody could play JUCO." No, there are JUCOs that are better than 4-year schools. And the athletes on there are better than the 4-year schools. So we joke about that because everybody thinks, "Well, I'll just take my kid. We'll go to junior college." No, you won't. I mean, you got to be recruited there. You got to get good enough to play, and depending on the level of play. Now, there are 3 levels. We call them Division I, Division II, and Division III at the junior college level. People don't need to get that confused with NCAA D1, D2, and D3. They just need to understand that JUCOs, junior colleges, community colleges have a athletic ranking system. They could be Division I, they could be Division II, or they could be Division III. Division I means they can give scholarships for athletics, academics. They can blend it up. They can give a kid the housing, and they can take care of everything: housing, meals, tuition, books, fee, everything at the Division I JUCO level. Division II JUCO level, there's limitations. Most of those do not have housing. They can't give housing. They can give tuition and books, but they can't do housing. Division III JUCOs have no money at all. So you're on a roster. You get an opportunity to play. There's no money, and so depending on the state you live in, and all of a sudden they could be a Division I and still have no money. They could be a D1 JUCO competing with that, but still have no money. Unless it's changed, California was that way. Okay, they had D1 JUCOs, but they weren't given any money because that's just what they did in the state system. Because all the junior college, community college systems normally fall completely under the state they're in for their education governing body there at their state, at the state level. And so that's, if they're not being able to fund it because the state's broke, they can't do it. So the other part of that too, Scott, is that parents don't realize, and I'm going to tell every parent this too, before you say something negative about junior college volleyball or D2 volleyball or D3 volleyball or NAI volleyball, go watch a match in the playoffs. Wait till the season gets to the end when they're starting their conference championships and their national championship brackets. Go watch a team play. You're going to find out very quickly that the game at every level is they're talented, they're fast, they're great athletes, There's good coaching that goes on there. It's quality volleyball. And that's what most people don't realize.
So, and you've alluded to this a couple times, but just talking about the size, speed, athleticism of these athletes at the college level, are the college coaches in the recruiting process, are they looking to that first?
We call it the box, Scott. And you've been coaching and developing players a long time. And I did a speaking engagement many years ago. And in the audience of this particular speaking engagement, it was a bunch of athletes at a private school up in Tennessee. And it was them and their parents that were there. And I was talking to them, and we were talking about recruiting, really bringing the education to them about the reality of the process. And a retired coach from Vanderbilt actually was in the crowd. He was a retired football coach, but we had all student types of athletes there, different sports. And we were alluding to at that point in time about how that you might be the best player at your high school. You may be the best player in your club or your travel organization. You may have made all state. You may have all these statistics that everybody just loves, and they're just, foam at the mouth about how awesome you are. But you got to fit in a box a lot of times. And that box is many times based on size, speed, height, weight, certain metrics in certain sports. We're talking specifically about volleyball here. Look, approach touch and game time approach touch, what we can consistently play at, we call it play level. That matters. It matters. And so, especially at positions, right? You're talking about an outside hitter or right side, especially an outside hitter. At the Division I level, it starts at 10 feet. That's if you can't get to 10 feet, they won't even hardly put an eye on you to evaluate you. You get over 10 feet, they'll take time to at least put their eyes on you and see. And that's across any position across the front. Okay, outside hitter, middle, right side, opposite, if that's what you want to call it. So that's just kind of the number. Now, there's a secondary number, Scott, that goes with that too, that really hurts people's feelings. It starts with a 6. The kid's got to be 6 foot tall or taller. Now, that doesn't mean that that's an end all live all, but I'm going to give you an example of a young lady that we were here in the state of Alabama years ago. This kid was the Gatorade Player of the Year in high school for the 7A state championship team 2 years in a row. She was 5'9". She could touch 10. Now, Scott, you've been training athletes a long time. That's pretty doggone athletic. I'm talking about powerful. And nobody could understand why there was no Nebraskas or Texas or Alabama even or Auburn or why was Florida and why was Mary Wise at Florida not on her? Well, she had one metric that everybody loved, but when you're 5'9", it takes a little extra time to get to 10'5" or 10'6". By the time you get there, the ball's already been played in front of you and ahead of you, and so at the end of the day, there's some mismatch there. She ended up playing Division I. She ended up going to Sanford in Birmingham, Alabama, which is small Division I. And the biggest thing that all the coaches worried about because of that size gap, right, is that she was having to press her body harder and more often and really maximize everything on every jump. So they were concerned about injury. And sure enough, the first semester there in summertime, when she got there for summer workouts, she blows an Achilles. So now she's hampered with that Achilles tendon, that Achilles rupture. And you know how that works for a full year. I mean, that's a long time recovery deal. And so she recovered, and then she ended up making all conference and all American and all that kind of stuff. She did an awesome job. She was a tremendous player. But people don't realize that there are those little things that come into play, and some coaches can't get past it. And if they're not a certain height or a certain approach touch for a certain position, they just can't get past it. Setters right now, everybody's talking about setters. And, I feel for kids that are setters that are 5'4", 5'5", 5'6". They're not going to ever be a Division I setter. I mean, I say that, and there's some exceptions to the rule, right? But the bottom line is that she's a great athlete. She runs the floor. She is the captain. She is the court general, and she is a tremendous athlete and probably maybe one of the best athletes on the floor. But because she's not a 5'11", 6'6'1", and can touch 9'9" or better herself as a setter, in case we need her to play defense, then all of a sudden she's not going to be fitting that box. So the answer to your question is, I think every program, every coach has their box that they look at. I think it is, as a general rule, we have 6 foot and 10-1, 10-2 for the Division I box. Power 4, that number gets up on into the mid-10s, and 6'2" and better in height as far as front row players. Your back row defensive specialist players, which are usually a type of 6 rotation outside hitter that's just a little undersized. And your setters, okay, great. They got to have height. I think your libero DSs, they just got to be one of the best athletes that's on the floor. She's got to be quick. She's got to be great. She's got to be refined in her skill sets. She's got to be able to play. So there are, especially when it comes to front row kids and setters, there's definitely a box that everybody looks at. And to get recruited when you're not in that box is the exception. It's not the rule.
Yeah, for sure. I work with all types of athletes, every sport. And, football players, they know they got to be in the weight room. Now, I mean, pretty much every sport knows this now. And it's not just the weight room, it's speed training, it's plyometric, it's jump training, it's everything. But I feel like that message has slowly gotten to volleyball at the high school level. I think you've got a lot of high school volleyball players that they want to play their high school season, they want to play their club season, play all the time, and that's not what's going to get them recruited. Give me your take on that.
I'm glad you asked that question. There are two complaints that we field from college coaches, and keep in mind, we're talking to those guys every day. We're talking to coaches every day throughout the country at every level because they're communicating with us about players that they want to recruit. But two of the biggest complaints we get has to do with strength and conditioning of a high school athlete before they get to college and the kid's nutrition before they get to college. Those two things. And the reason that we have those complaints is the college coaches, they're dealing with this guy from a standpoint. A kid comes in, they've invested all this recruiting time in that kid. They decided to offer this kid. This kid signed. This kid. Let's talk about Division I, Division II. They bring them in midsummer. They're going to get them there in the end of June, 1st of July. Give them a full month and a half worth of time of strength conditioning and working out, getting used to the team before they start their season in mid-August or 1st September. And so all of a sudden they get them in there. And then they start noticing that they're freshmen. If we have an issue physically, it's going to be we're having muscle pull, we're having ligament and tendon issues, we're having shin issues, shin splints, we're having turf. We call it turf toe, but it's actually I mean, you haven't done things properly to really strengthen the whole lower body system. And so you start having a problem with your feet. I mean, so there's all kind of things. And what they begin to realize is that we're losing. One of the things they go to the transfer portal for is they don't have to worry about that kid getting them up the curve on the strength and conditioning piece when they get there. So what does that mean? That means that high school kids have got to understand you can't just go play every weekend for club, and you can't play every weekend. And there's a such thing as overplaying. What are you doing 3 days a week in your strength and conditioning, and also your healing of your body from breaking it down, the proper rest and nutrition? What are you doing during the week to get ready to maximize performance on a weekend when you do go play? And that piece of it is so when coaches won't just say, look, I like the kid. I'm just concerned about, when we talk to her about work ethic, I don't know how I don't know. She's going to spend more time in the training room with the trainers and the doctors and the physicians and the chiropractors and the physical therapists getting fixed. She's going to miss a lot of practice time with us. And that's what happens, Scott. These kids that don't do strength and conditioning in high school the right way, they get to college and they spend half their first semester in the training room with the doctors and with the physicians and the chiropractors and the physical trainers and ice and stem and cold baths and stretched and all that stuff because they can't practice, they can't play. So the coach feels like, okay, here I've got this 18-year-old, 19-year-old girl I just brought in, and she didn't take care of business when she was in high school. So Scott, the answer to your question is every kid that plays volleyball, she better find herself in the weight room, and she better find somebody that can actually learn. She can learn how to properly train, because if she doesn't, she's behind the 8 ball when she gets to college. And I don't care what level it's at. She gets to college, she's behind the 8 ball because she hasn't spent the time needed to learn how to do strength and conditioning. And nutrition is there as well. They better learn how to eat. You got to fuel that body. That body's not going to fuel its own on Cocoa Puffs and a Diet Coke. Okay. So it's just not. You better learn how to use protein and carbohydrates and starches and all the things you got to learn to do it the right way to fuel that body at the right time.
Yeah, the nutrition side of it's bad. I see how these kids, including my own, eat, and females typically from the protein intake are so undernutritioned. It's amazing their bodies don't break more often.
Absolutely.
And so that's one thing we're always preaching is the nutrition side. And then also, it's harder to get a female into the weight room. And then it's also another challenge to get them to understand it's okay to lift heavy. And we give them standards. We've had this many Division I athletes. Here's what they were doing when they were in high school. Here's how much they were deadlifting, how much they could clean, how much they could squat. And, you give those numbers to a 14-year-old freshman and it's overwhelming. And so it's, my side of the business, there's a lot of trust that has to be built. And, but I feel like volleyball, we're a little bit behind there.
We are.
Volleyball players want to go play. They don't want to get in the gym and get sweaty and lift heavy and have to get uncomfortable. And I think from a recruiting standpoint, that ought to be the first place they're going.
Let me jump on that real quick with you, Scott, because you've hit kind of a little bit of a pet peeve, okay, for me individually. And for the parents and kids that are going to listen to this, you need or watch this, you got to hear this. Guys, there are about 140 to 150,000 girls in every grad class, Scott, not just in high school playing, 140 or 50 in every grad class that are playing volleyball in high school club in the United States. Now, not all of them want to play in college. I understand that, but the significant number of them do. And there's less than 7,000 spots on average every year to go and play in college. So then the question becomes, what are you doing as a high school player other than just going to play like everybody else is doing? What are you doing to separate yourself out from everybody else that's going to make you stand out? There comes a time where you have to put something into it and be willing to put something into it that nobody else is willing to do. And those are the kids when it's all said and done. This doesn't happen by luck. Being recruited doesn't happen because you show up at a tournament. That's one of those misnomers that all these clubs are pitching people. Oh, you're going to come play in this showcase with us. You're going to go play in this tournament. You're going to be seen. That's a load of garbage. That's a load of garbage. Coaches already know who they're going to look at before they ever get to a tournament, before they ever get to the showcase. They already have their list. Okay. It's usually who you know that introduced them to that person too, but that coach, by the way. It's not just random. But when they get there, that coach is looking at that kid, and let's say that she's a junior. So she's a 27 grad in today's money. Well, does she look like a college player right now, or does she look like she's still a high school kid? Now, parents, as you're listening to this, I need you to understand what I mean by that. Does she physically look like she's putting the work in? And does she look like what a college player is? Because coaches want to recruit kids that already look like college players. Does she have defined calves? Does she have quads that pop off underneath her leggings or underneath her shorts that she's wearing? When you look at her, does she have a little bit of a triangle that comes off her shoulders? I'm not talking about huge like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Okay, that's not what I mean. I mean, does she look like she's been in the weight room training? Does she have a little bit of pop in her tricep? I mean, at the end of the day, they don't have to look like muscle builders, but what they do have to look like is she training? And by the time they get to be a senior, there should be a definite differentiation between a kid that looks like an athlete that's going to play at the collegiate level and a kid that doesn't. Now, that's a pet peeve, Scott, and I realize that could be offensive to some people, and I don't want it to be offensive. I just want them to understand that there's got to be a big differentiation between what you do as an athlete and what you expect as a result of it. My
Yeah, for
wife told me
sure.
something the other day that made sense. She said, look, you can't lean on a shovel and pray for a hole. Okay. The hole's not going to appear just because you're leaning on a shovel. You got to put the tool to work. Well, that's the same thing about wanting to play collegiately. You got tools all around you. You got people that are smart in strength and conditioning. You got people that can help you with nutrition. You got people that if you struggle in the classroom that can help you with tutoring and get your grades up. You got people that understand recruiting, the ins and outs of it, exactly what's going to get you and what you're not going to get. Parents are wasting so much money on stuff they shouldn't be wasting money on. They need to be actually invested in some people that know what they're doing. And I'm talking about strength and conditioning, nutrition, recruiting. This whole idea of DIY, do it yourself, DIY, whatever it is, I'm going to do it myself. Okay, great. Good luck to you, because you don't even know that you're supposed to have an NCAA eligibility number, and you don't know it's supposed to be an academic and amateur certification status. And all of a sudden you go by this process and your kids are under nutrition, they're under strength. They hadn't been strength conditioned where they should. And now you want to know why you're not getting recruited, because you hadn't done all the things that's got to be done to get there to begin with.
Yeah.
That sounds preachy, didn't it, Scott? Just for a minute. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
Well, no, I want to touch on your pet peeve is ironically what your description of what they should look like is what is keeping a lot of the females out of the weight room. They are terrified that they're going to get big. And I've got probably 150 high school boys football players right now that are doing everything they can to get big.
Get
And
big.
it just doesn't work that way. It is a number one, a different type of lifting that we would be doing with a off-season football player, and more importantly, what he'd be doing in the kitchen, because that's where you're going to gain the weight.
Right.
And so, I preach to females that you don't have to worry about that. We are training for power. We are doing low volume, high intensity movements to help you jump higher, to help you move faster, to help you hit harder. That does not translate to increase muscle
Hey,
size and increase weight gain. And so, that is a huge, huge thing that I deal with female
yeah.
athletes. And it's just that fear of they don't want to get muscle bound and they don't have to
Well,
worry about that.
listen, they don't want to get muscle bound, but they need defined.
Yes.
Then that's what I mean when I'm talking about earlier. I'm not talking about a kid walking out with some big old guns. I'm talking about when her sleeves up, you can see the definition of a tricep on the backside of it because that's where power's coming out of it. You can see the definition of a calf that's developed when she goes up to jump and that calf pops at the top and she's got really small ankles. That's athletic. Here's how silly this is. This is an old ball coach, Scott, and I think you and I probably talked about this before. When we would go evaluate players, people would look at me and I'm looking down at the ground. When I first meet them and they're in their sweatpants or they're in their shorts working out, I'm looking at the ground. You know what I'm looking at, right? I'm looking at their ankles. I'm looking at their ankles. How big are your ankles? Do we have cankles? Or do we have defined ankles with calves to our knees and then they pop when we walk and their definition there? Okay, that's one of those things that is silly. It doesn't have to be huge and massive, and it's got to be defined. That tells me something about you as a person if it's defined. So I'm glad you brought that up. This isn't about a young lady putting on mass. It's not about a young lady gaining weight. It's about a young lady actually getting defined so that you can look at her and go, okay, she's athletic. She's athletic. In other words, they pass the eye test when we look at them as a player.
Mhm.
Now, parents have never heard that before, Scott, and they think it's weird when you say, "Look, she passes the eye test. Let's see where we go from here." And that's the first look at somebody. Do they look the part?
So all the money being invested into highlight reels, special camps they're supposed to be going to get seen, none of that really matters, does it?
There's a time and place for a camp, and there's a time and place for certain things that you're going to spend money on. I wrote something not long ago. It's on the NSR site, and basically it's look. I've never had a college coach ever ask me, hey, what is your daughter's ranking with this particular combine company or this particular publication? I don't want to talk bad about anybody, but there's all these places out there. If you come to their little camps and they come to little showcases and they give you a little ranking and, she's the 21st best setter in the country. And so you've seen all the setters in the country. I mean, you've actually evaluated all of them. And by the way, who's doing the evaluation? Is a college coach doing the evaluation? Somebody that actually deals with every player and understands what every level looks like, or she's been to your camp and she's paid $395 for 7 times in a row, and you figured you'll get at least give her 21, so she'll come back to try to get to 19 next time and pay another $395. So I understand that everybody's chasing something, but here's the thing. If a college coach has seen you play individually or on video, and they've communicated with you and you with them, and then they've asked you, hey, we like you as a player, and you're a player that we may want to recruit. We would like for you to come to our individual prospect camp at our campus. Okay, we might want to go to that, Scott. We might need to go to that one. But the one that 400 people are going to show up at under some random promotion company that's putting one out there, as we say in the South, man, that dog's not going to hunt. There's no college coaches there that don't pay attention. It's being run by an organization, usually owned by club coaches that are trying to make a living, trying to make money, and I get that. But at the end of the day, there's a place for them and there's a place not to waste time on them. And I'm afraid we have a lot of people in the country, the parents are wasting a lot of time, energy, and money in places they just don't need to be spending it. If a coach doesn't know who your child is before you get to that camp, they're not going to know who she is after she leaves that camp. So you better spend the time necessary to make sure that coach invited her and wants to see her and she actually fits. I had this situation not long ago. 5'10" kid touching 9'6", and they were swore that Texas was going to. She was an outside hitter, Scott, and she's like, "Well, Texas is recruiting me. I've got an email from them every year asking me to come to their camp." And I said, "They want your $345." I mean, well, the dad's like, "Well, you don't think they're being recruited?" I said, "No. Number one, she's a junior. We're already past June 15th. If she was going to be recruited by Texas, we'd have known. But let's back up. It goes further than that. She's 5'10". She touches 9'6". Almost every kid on the front row at Texas can take a volleyball and dunk it on a 10-foot basketball goal. That means they're touching at least 10.5 to 10.6. So parents are spending money and chasing things without understanding that they need to be evaluated first to understand where they fit. And I know you and I have had that discussion before individually offline. And that's one thing I think that parents don't realize. Not everybody gets a trophy and not everybody's going to be able to get what they want. They need to understand coaches got to want them and it's where you fit.
Yeah. Okay, I've got one more question for you, and but I want to back up and just I want to repeat something that you said.
Okay.
So if you are a 2026 grad, 2027 grad, 2028 grad, and so on and so on, there are 150,000 volleyball players in your graduating class. That is a ridiculous number. And you talk about 7,000 spots at the NCAA level or the college level,
College level.
at the college level. And we've got 2,000 girls in the transfer portal. And we've got international players coming in. I think volleyball at the NCAA Division I level might be one of the hardest places to get to in all of college sports.
I'm going to agree with you with that. I think there's three sports as we look at this whole landscape right now of playing Division One: volleyball, men's baseball, and football. And those three, maybe in that order, are the most difficult to get to a point where you're going to play out of high school, to sign and go play Division One. The odds are simply just not lined up with us. And you have to fit. We've talked about so much in here so far today, right? We've talked about the box, the recruiting box, certain height, certain speed. We've talked about strength and conditioning, looking the part. We've talked about, I even mentioned academics earlier about, kid needing to have good academics in the classroom, which we haven't spent a lot of time on, but I mentioned it. There are so many pieces of that it makes it so murky if you don't actually understand how you're navigating and what you're supposed to navigate. And it's a difficult process. But when 1.2% of the athletes that play 1.3% of the athletes that play volleyball in high school get a chance to play at any D1 level, and I'm talking about mid-major all the way up to Power Four, right? There's 300 and some odd volleyball programs that play Division One in the country, and Power Four and mid majors, et cetera. Well, there's another 1,500 programs that are not Division One, and they're D2 and NAI and Division Three and JUCO. That's where the majority of kids are landed. And it's only 4.9% of the kids in high school are going to go play in college at any level. So it's not like we line up and these parents don't realize your daughter is not just competing against the kid that's across the net. Your daughter is competing against another kid that's also in 5 states over and also maybe even in another country. And you're competing against the girl that's now a woman. She's 21 years old and she's had 3 years of playing experience. She's got 2 years of playing eligibility left. And your 18-year-old, 17-year-old is actually being compared against that. That's how difficult this process is now. And I get so tired of, and I'm about to offend people. I don't want to offend them. I just want you to understand. I get so tired of hearing, well, my club coach, my club recruiting core, my high school coach, my so-and-so. Well, if they were going to do something for you, it done been done. Everybody has to understand it's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. And it takes so much more to actually get doors opened up than it used to. Scott, I'm old. I'm older than you. Okay. Y'all already know I played in the 80s at Ole Miss. What it means that, I'm 57 years old. Back when I came out of high school, man, in 1980, graduated in May of 86. My last football season, senior year, was 85, right? When I graduated in 83, 84, 85, I had a head coach that was an All-American at Alabama on the football side, played for the New York Giants, came back. He was already in the Hall of Fame of Alabama high school football before he took the job at my high school. I mean, this cat knows everybody, right? Well, back then, Scott, that coach picked up the phone and just called somebody at another school and says, hey, look, I need you. I got a big offensive lineman. He's the real deal. You need to come recruit him. And that's how it happened. That's how it happened back then. It was that simple. And you're not far off my generation, 10 or 12 years probably, but still, maybe a little bit more. But that's simply how it worked probably on into the early 90s. But then all of a sudden, the way it happens now, that's not the way this works. Coaches are inundated with film and video and people tagging them on X and tagging them on Instagram and send them, and by kids that can't play for them. And all of a sudden their time is wasted on kids that can't play and they lose track of the kids that can. And that's the difference in it. It is difficult. It is difficult. Volleyball is tough. I'm on all these Facebook and Instagram pages and that stuff for these, volleyball moms and volleyball dads and all these different things. And there's some really interesting opinions out there.
Yeah,
But
there is.
opinions are like elbows and belly buttons. Everybody's got one.
Yep.
But it don't mean yours is right. It just means it's yours.
Yeah.
But I tell people there is absolute truth. And it is not a matter of opinion. It is what happens by fact every day in the process. That's where we got to live. And you better understand that for your own children if that's what you want to do. If their dreams to play in college, you better be educated on what the facts really are. and not somebody's opinion.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate, I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade, but I think people need to have a realistic expectation of where they can play. And don't go somewhere so you can say I played at this level. Go somewhere where you can play and have a great experience and make friends that you're going to have your entire life. Okay, so closing up, I'm going to give you a real world scenario. I've got a new athlete in the gym. She's been there for about a month. She's a freshman. She's 6'2" tall. She surprisingly is not baby giraffe. She moves pretty well. What do you do with that girl?
So first of all, from a recruiting standpoint, for myself as a peer to the college coaches, I'm going to tell you, look, number one, send me video. Let me watch her play. Let me see what she looks like on the court. Then I'm going to ask, okay, now I need metrics. I don't need metrics that are not verified. I need to know what her true height is with shoes, because we're playing in shoes. We're not playing barefooted, right? So I'm okay with getting height and shoes. I need to know what her standing reach is. I need to know what her wingspan is. I need to know what her approach touch is and what her block touch is. Once I have those things and I say, okay, you know what? This kid has some big time potential here. Then we're going to talk about what they need to do in the weight room and what they need to do with strength and conditioning, because that's going to be the thing that takes that freshman and puts her in a situation next year. If she's touching 9'5" or 9'6" now, which is probably not bad for a 6'2" kid that's fairly athletic. And then all of a sudden you get a situation like that, especially you as a trainer, and you get her in the weight room and man, she takes hold of it and she works on strength and conditioning, she works on nutrition. And then all of a sudden by the end of her sophomore year, she's touching 10 feet. You got a potential Division I athlete there.
She touched 9'8" last week. So
You
that
got a
was
potential.
our initial test, and I've told her everything I've learned from you. You know, the great thing is she's 14 years old and you've got mom and dad on board. They understand this
Yep.
side of it. And so, yeah, I'm excited about her and, we'll see where it goes.
Then send me some video on that kid. That's a kid I want to see.
Absolutely. Yep.
So there's a good chance of me being out in Casper and Billings and Arizona and Las Vegas. I may have seen that kid play already.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when she was younger, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, there's a chance. So, well, Robert, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time. I enjoy our conversations. We touched on volleyball today. So I know you work with a lot of other sports. So we're probably going to have to do this again. But I really did enjoy the conversation, and I appreciate you coming on.
Well, as you can tell, Scott, Coach, I'm passionate about what we do, and I know you are as well in the way you handle kids and the way that you treat and train athletes. And I think it's really good for us to have people like you in the community that are dedicated to helping young people. And when those of us that's coached forever, you know, why do we do it? And it's because we love seeing a young person be able to develop into something that's their dream and their goal and actually achieve that thing because they've worked so hard for it. And that's tremendously rewarding. I know you've helped a number of athletes that are at every level over the years. And every time one of your athletes goes and gets a chance to go play, it's almost like you're a proud dad, right? You're proud of
Right.
that kid. You're thrilled for them. You feel a sense of accomplishment that you've helped them get to that point too. You're in the back, you're in the back though. You're behind the scenes. You're not, we don't ever I'm not showing up at their signing. I'm not a part of the front deal like a lot. I'm just that guy that sits back and goes, yeah, I had a little to do with that kid that's playing in the NFL now. I had a little bit to do with that kid that got drafted in the first round by the Washington Nationals. I had a lot to do with that. And you smile about it and you go, wow, that's why I do what I do. And it's fun. I appreciate you,
Absolutely.
my friend. Thanks for having me. I'm always happy to join in anytime you'd like to have me. And anytime we talk about sports and young people, I'm all about it.
Yeah. Where can parents, athletes that are interested in what you have to offer, where can they find you?
So there's a couple things you can do. Obviously they can contact you at any time. You have my direct contact information, so they can contact you. They can go to nsr-inc.com, which is on this media backdrop behind me. You can see that. I think I'm the only guy that's got a real cloth media backdrop that's anymore instead of one of those virtual ones. But or you can find me and I'm glad to give you a cell phone number. You can call and reach me anytime and we can talk about that. My cell phone number is 251-554-0211. That's 251-554-0211. You can reach me there at any time. And I'm glad to talk to you about your athlete. And then if it's possible, We may have a scout that works for NSR that's going to be in that area, in that region. Maybe they come see her play, or any other athlete see him play. But we definitely take video and watch it and tear it down and break it down first, and kind of let you know what you have. But I got to tell everybody, Scott, and you know me, be ready to hear what you need to hear and not what you want to hear, because we're going to be very straightforward about what we see. There's too many people in the space of recruiting now, Scott. That's we won't get into the acronyms they go by, but they're just all about signing some kid up, putting them on some platform, and giving them some profile. Recruiting's bigger than that. There's got to be a who you know that's involved in it. There's got to be a recruit. There's got to be an evaluation process that's involved in it. It's got to be there. So that's what we do.
All right. Again, appreciate you, and we will talk again soon.
All right, Coach. Thanks for having me.
Awesome conversation today with Robert Cagle of NSR. Talked a lot about volleyball, the recruiting process, how it's changed, what it takes to get to that next level, no matter what level we're talking about. It's great information. Really appreciate him being on the show. With Benson Sports Training, we do have a volleyball-specific development program. Focuses on power, jumping, hitting, moving, high speed, everything. For a limited time, we've got that at 15% off. Go to bensonsportstraining.com, select the program, put 15 off in the discount code at checkout, and get started with us today. Check us out, bensonsportstraining.com, or any of our socials, Benson Sports Training. Thanks for being with us today.